Debate, and I've pulled the article in which you were quoted on the Standard yesterday. Challenges arise on Raila political path amid Kenya Kwanza on slot. Talk of Raila's support base disintegrating thanks to a series of events that have unfolded since he lost the elections is rife. Raila's lack of a navigable plan immediately after last year's polls has been singled out as his greatest undoing. And speaking of his support base disintegrating in the vote in the National Assembly, I did mention there was an article penned and published in the Weekly Review by Macharia Gaiva, and I just want to look at some 2 paragraphs here. Odinga's Azimio troops, by contrast, appeared disjointed and dispirited. Instead of turning up in large numbers to take advantage of any likely defections or abstentions from Kenya Kwanza MPs afraid of public backlash, it was the opposition benches that suffered significantly from no-shows and defiance of the party line. How the vote was likely to go was evident from the first reading, there we go, of the bill, and from then on the pattern was set for the second and third readings. By conclusion of debate at the final clause by closed votes on Wednesday, the outcome was a foregone conclusion. The opposition leadership in parliament was resigned to resounding defeat and already signaling that they would seek recourse outside the House. Your thoughts, Mark?
Well, I couldn't agree more with Macharia Gaido, and this is the analytical view of it. That number one, what has happened since Azimio lost the election is it has had a lot of attrition of its members. We know the minority, deputy minority whip works for the majority, Sabina Chege. She's totally comfortable eating cake in Kenya Kwanza while claiming to have her cake also in the minority. So it's a mess. Let's begin there. Secondly, if you look at the numbers, especially during the first vote on this bill, if all Azimio MPs showed up, they would have actually defeated that bill. That's a funny thing. Now, the thing is does Azimio have MPs? That's a question I'm asking myself. Why am I asking myself this question? The number of MPs who've gone to pledge loyalty in the name of we are now working with the president, as though being an MP, you are supposed to work with who else? Who? You know, the fact that you are in parliament, you work with the president. But there's been this great show of basically lining up and kissing the ring that has happened to Azimio. So first and foremost, Azimio, in terms of its parliamentary numbers and its ability to maneuver within parliament, that is dead. And that brings me to my second point, that Raila Odinga, Martha Karua and the rest have realized one thing, that it is from the people that they need a new mandate. Because among their political leadership, they have basically by droves moved into government. A lot of Azimio is in the majority. What the only hope, the only lining, silver lining in the cloud and the thunderstorms that is there for Azimio is going back to the people and seeking fresh impetus and fresh mandate from the people. They have no other tactical choice. The other thing that is of advantage to them, despite their message so far, is that for once their message is ringing true for a lot of Kenyans. The pain and the chagrin of Kenyans in terms of what they're paying at the till, what they're paying for food, what they're paying for electricity is resounding. And Azimio is literally the only political outfit as it is today that is speaking to those needs. So does Azimio have an opportunity in speaking to the people and seeking fresh energy from them? Yes, they have something, because the cost of living before this bill comes into effect, after it goes into effect, will be painful for Kenyans. That's the only thing Azimio has. In terms of its parliamentary numbers and its ability to move its parliamentarians, that ship has long sailed. Ruto's ring is big, thick, and generous.
All right. Interesting. I note today Mark is the one who is outnumbered. You know, Javas had said outnumbered, outwitted. Hopefully you will not be outwitted.
Do not worry. I am not out at sea, as Javas would put it.
So,
but Arnold,
I think later on, so that we don't lose the momentum on the subject, later on you will allow me to actually make a comment on the president being Africa's diplomat.
I'm sorry, I didn't give you occasion to respond to that.
You only allowed Mark, but I don't want us to lose this particular momentum. It's only important that I put it there. So I wanted, first of all, before I delve into this, to understand, are we talking about Azimio or are we talking about the opposition?
Is Azimio not the?
No, I'm just asking so that we do not deflect here. And
the de facto, let's say they are the de facto opposition.
So we are talking about the opposition, the general, right? So the question here is, what should they do? Where do they go? How do we move forward? Ordinarily, I do not stand in a place probably where I would advise them because they are quite seasoned people. But I know a number of things. Oppositions don't win elections. Governments lose elections. So the current Azimio we have is a government that lost an election. So that's just how it is. So strategically, you will say that probably Azimio goes back on the drawing board to study this regime and understand it. Because if they had understood them, they would not have lost to them. They need to study this regime and understand it and its agenda. Number two, then they should be able to set up the opposition agenda. Number three, of course, they need to offer thought leadership. Number four, they probably need to learn from the past. And then number five, we will be expecting that they should be able to a little bit be innovative, throw people off balance once in a while, because as it is today, they are very predictable. And then number six, you will expect that once in a while they compromise. Because there is a time where for national good and public good, you compromise. We see that across governments all over. But you see, there is a challenge here. Before we talk about these strategic steps that they can actually take, Azimio has remained tactical as opposed to being, why I said that there is a difference between opposition and Azimio is that the entirety of opposition, of course, it has got a section of civil society, and even a section of the media has decided to join opposition, and then, of course, Azimio. So when you define Kenya's opposition, you must be fair enough to include a section of the media.
Which section, Arnold? Be clear.
So, so that's why I actually was asking, we need to know, are we talking about Azimio? We are talking about the entirety that is opposition. But then, before we talk about probably Azimio gets into the 6 steps, the strategic steps probably to come out and help. And by that deepen our democracy, because opposition makes quality of